Hello and a very warm welcome back to HuwsNursery, and in this video I want to talk about what causes tomatoes to split and crack and how we can prevent this from happening in the future. And just before I get into today's episode, I want to thank Gardena for sponsoring this, and you'll see why a little later on. Almost every gardener I know grows their own tomatoes, and the reason why is homegrown tomatoes taste a million times better than any other tomatoes that you can get. Mainly because you eat them so fresh, and I must admit, most of our cherry tomatoes this year haven't even made it near the house because it's so easy to walk in and get lost eating them because they're so sweet. Now, hypothetically, tomatoes are fairly easy to grow, but unfortunately, especially in the UK, tomatoes can have a lot of problems, and this year we have the problem of splitting. Now, tomato fruits tend to split most just as they're ripening, so you can see these really nice green fruits and you think, oh, these are going to be great, and then you see the next day or the day after that they've got this split or crack going either vertically or horizontally all the way around the fruit, and this can be very demoralizing. But there are a couple of reasons why this happens. The first reason is fluctuation in temperature. So if you've been following my channel, you've noticed that we have had quite a severe drought. So we had 3 months of virtually no rain and really hot temperatures. We went on holiday and then we came back to find rain and cool weather once again, reminding that yes, I am in Wales. Now, the thing about fluctuating temperatures is that this can affect the ripening process of tomatoes and as a result can cause tomatoes to crack. Usually when it comes to tomatoes ripening, it's the inconsistency of watering which has the greatest effect for the tomato fruits to split, because temperature fluctuations earlier on in the year can actually have quite a big impact where it causes this problem called cat facing. So tomatoes get corky scars, but this usually happens when the fruits are just beginning to set more in early summer. So what you really need to start looking at is the amount of water that your tomato plants get. What I mean by inconsistent watering is actually the soil moisture levels changing, and the thing is that tomatoes do actually want a fairly consistent soil moisture. Now, you've got to make sure to not overwater, because having a wet soil for tomato plants is a place that you don't want to get to. A good simple rule of thumb that you can follow is to water your tomato plants every 2 days on really hot sunny days, and then if you have overcast days, water them deeply every 3 days. What I mean by watering deeply is holding a watering can at the base of the stem of the tomato plant and watering it for around 10 seconds, because this is going to give you a nice quantity of water which is going to soak down, and a really important depth that you want to aim for is for the water to go down at least 15 to 20 centimeters, so around 6 to 8 inches, because this is going to have maximum impact. You've got to remember that even if the surface of the soil looks moist, you need to just dig down a bit, because maybe 2 to 3 centimeters or an inch below the surface it could be bone dry. Hence why a nice long deep watering is needed to give the roots of the tomato plants deep down in the soil enough chance to get some water. One of the most common suspects of inconsistent watering, which I'll put my hand up for, is going on holiday, because once you go away you might give your tomato plants really good soaking, but then if you're away for a week or longer they're not going to get any water, and then by the time you come back and give another good watering, the tomato plants are going to get really excited because they've suddenly got all this moisture which can help the fruits to ripen nicely, and then before you know it you'll wake up the next day, go along and see that a lot of your tomato plants have split. Now, this is also the case if you're growing tomato plants outside, where unfortunately it's actually quite difficult. For example, if a rainstorm comes and you suddenly get a lot of water, then this can just as easily cause the tomatoes to split. So probably one of the easiest ways around this is to actually approach your friends or your neighbours and strike up a deal with them where if they water your tomato plants deeply every couple of days, they can help themselves to some of the tomatoes. And I think that's a really fair bartering or a really fair exchange of services. Before I go into talking about perhaps a more efficient way of watering your tomato plants to reduce the chances of them splitting, I just want to come back quickly to temperature. Now, temperature is one of the hardest things to control, and if you have a posh temperature control greenhouse, that's fine, but a lot of people don't, and especially if you're growing tomatoes outdoors, it's nearly impossible to control the temperature. So the best thing that you can do is actually to control the extremes. So if you're growing in a polytunnel, one of the extremes can be a really hot day where the sun is scorching down and you walk inside and immediately you want to walk outside because it's so warm. The best way to solve this is by just having really good ventilation. So open both of the doors. That's one of the key things that you need to make sure that you do. Now, what tends to happen, especially in this part of Wales, is when it comes to the end of August through to September time, suddenly we get cooler nights. Now, if you see a night which is going to be unusually cool, so for example below 10 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Fahrenheit, then that's a good idea to maybe bring your tomato plants indoors into your house, or if you have a polytunnel, to make sure that you've shut your doors, because it's just about reducing the extremes. It's impossible to eliminate these, but every little helps. What I feel is going to be a really effective way of preventing tomatoes from splitting in future growing seasons, and also hence why this video is sponsored by Gardena, is by actually setting up a drip irrigation system. The thing about watering is sometimes, I will admit it, I can't be bothered to sit around filling up watering cans and then going around watering every single plant. What I want is something really easy that I can set in place, and then all I need to do is turn on a tap, let it do its job, and then turn off the tap. So I'm going to be setting up a drip irrigation system for our tomatoes next year. So what I'll be using actually is the adjustable inline dripper. So I can set the adjustable drippers to either 2 or 3 litres of water released per hour, turn on the tap, put a timer on my phone. Once the timer goes off, I can come back up an hour later and turn it off. And that's the whole thing, is about making vegetable gardening easy and efficient. So it's going to be really good to be able to set that up, and stay tuned for a video next year, hopefully around early March time, where I'm going to be placing that infrastructure. I'm going to leave you with one final tip, and this is about the best time of day to water your tomato plants. The thing about tomato diseases is that they like a lot of moisture and humidity. So if you water at night and there isn't much airflow, then the water and moisture is just going to sit there, and this can harbour disease. So the best time to do it is actually at dawn, so fairly early on in the morning, and if you don't fancy an early rise, then any time until about 10-11 AM should be just fine. Also, make sure that your tomato plants are well ventilated, because having still, humid air is just a recipe for disaster when it comes to growing tomatoes. So I really hope this will help prevent your tomatoes from splitting. Now, if they are currently happening, then the best thing to do is just as soon as possible fall into a consistent watering schedule, and stay tuned for some point early next year when I'm going to be setting up, and I'll show you how to set up a micro drip irrigation system. So hopefully we'll be future-proof from this problem. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Goodbye.